I couldn't skip it, sorry. All right. Hello, and thank you all for coming this evening. I hope you're enjoying yourselves so far. As Madeleine has said, the Alliance of Pro-Life Students builds, supports, and connects student pro-life societies across Great Britain. The Alliance of Pro-Life Students recognises the inherent and irreplaceable value of every human life from fertilisation until natural death. We are opposed to any practice which undermines the respect, especially those practices which intentionally aim at the destruction of human life, including, but not exhaustive, abortion, assisted suicide, and the intentional destruction of human embryos during experimentation and in vitro fertilization. The Alliance of Pro-Life Students is run by students and graduates for students. Our unique mission is to build university pro-life communities across Great Britain that have a lasting and profound respect for human life. The Alliance of Pro-Life Students is now a well-established organisation, but it's time for us to up our game, to move closer to our ultimate vision of a society where the value of human life is always affirmed and society is free from unethical practices in science and medicine which disregard this intrinsic value. I'm going to speak for roughly 20 minutes about where the Alliance of Pro-Life Students has come from, where we are going, what our next level looks like, and then later on you will have 2 opportunities to support our important work. So why did the Alliance of Pro-Life Students begin? 4 years ago, no one was focused on supporting pro-life students. There were pro-life groups that were happy to help, but the campus pro-life movement was well and truly stuck in a rut, making no progress from year to year. At the same time, larger pro-life organisations weren't getting many applications for their positions, and in particular, they weren't getting many applications from outside the existing pro-life movement. Student groups would regularly be started up on campus by 1 or 2 keen individuals, but they would quickly fizzle out and disappear once those people had graduated. There was little continuity and no progress year on year, just groups constantly being forced to reinvent the wheel in isolation of one another. Student life is transient. People come and go quickly, and unless being pro-life is a real focus, potential leaders can find themselves leaving before they've even gotten started. The opposition on campus to groups aiming to uphold the dignity of all human life can create an additional roadblock compared to setting up more acceptable societies or groups, which isn't even that easy to begin with. All of these challenges and issues used to stand in the way of the pro-life message being championed on campus. And although pro-life groups did try and support students, there was no one focused on the most important demographic to the pro-life movement. Students are the most important demographic because the students of today are the leaders and shapers of tomorrow. University is a time in people's life when most will make up their minds on some of the most important issues, especially life issues. It is also a time and place which can potentially seem the most incompatible with a pregnancy. And it is young women of university age and their unborn babies who are most likely to fall victim of abortion. Universities are also home to some of the most counter-life and unethical practices currently undertaken, whether it be experimentation on embryos or the development of flawed screening processes which lead to the termination of pregnancies, as we recently saw brought into sharp focus by Sally Phillips' A World Without Downs, which highlighted the fact that in Britain, 90% of babies diagnosed with Down syndrome are aborted, and it's even higher in other countries. University is also a time when young people can find themselves almost completely removed from other demographics such as the elderly and disabled. As a result, these groups can sometimes be harder to relate to, and a lower quality of life can seem as a cause for compassionate options such as assisted suicide to be available. university is a key time in the formation of a world's view, as I've already said. That makes it a crucial time for the pro-life cause to ensure that these students hear the pro-life message and have the opportunity to realize the inherent dignity of all human life and the right to life of all. The people best placed to get this message to students are other students. And the most efficient and effective way to do this is by setting up a pro-life group or society on campus. We all know that when it comes to moral issues, sometimes the greatest influence comes from our peers, especially as young adults. A view which is universally silenced or shouted down is not a view that most people will champion unless they can see that their peers are championing it already. That's why the students are best placed to get the message to other students. And societies are the best method because they unlock resources and allow the building of a legacy from year to year, which is independent of the individuals who run the societies. But as I've said, setting up a pro-life society isn't always easy. And given this transient nature of student life, in the past, many were set up but simply didn't survive over subsequent years. So, over 4 years ago, a group of young graduates and students decided that something needed to be done in order to help pro-life students on campus. So, the Alliance of Pro-Life Students was inaugurated 4 years ago on the 6th of September 2012. So we've just celebrated our 4th birthday, but there's no need to sing just yet. It was at that time that we held 2 launches, one in Edinburgh and one in London, which some of you will have attended, and there you will have become supporters of the Alliance of Pro-Life Students. I'd like to thank those of you that were there for supporting the then fledgling initiative and for continuing to do so. So what has the Alliance of Pro-Life Students achieved in the past 4 years? Since our foundation, we've been building, supporting, and connecting pro-life students across Great Britain. We've held leadership training every year in both Scotland and South East England in order to prepare new life committees and pro-life leaders. Earlier this autumn, we held our leadership training in both Glasgow and London, with over 30 students in attendance. These students represented 8 campuses across Great Britain, and we now have active groups at Strathclyde, St Andrews, Edinburgh, Newcastle, Cardiff, Cambridge, Oxford, and most recently in the past week, Liverpool. And there's more in the pipeline as we speak. Leadership training is a one-day event or weekend program of talks and workshops which advance the skills of pro-life leaders and committees. Committees are the people who run pro-life societies on campus, made up normally of a president, treasurer, secretary, and some ordinary members referred to as the skivvies. Those people are responsible for the activities of the society, such as putting on talks and debates and launching motions. We've held 2 parties in Parliament, giving pro-life students direct access to the current policymakers of this country, and also showing the seat of power that young people are interested in these issues and they are against anti-life practices. AGMs are normally an event which strike fear into people's hearts, with overriding images of boredom and long, unnecessary free speeches. But that is most certainly not the case with an Alliance of Pro-Life Students AGM, which is now a firm highlight of the pro-life calendar. And it is quite simply the most fun an AGM can be while still being valid. In fact, it's not even been unheard of for people to reconsider entering student life just to gain access. As I said, student groups and societies are the most efficient and effective way to get the pro-life message out on campus. It gives a central contact point for pro-life students to seek out. It unlocks practical advantages such as room booking, web hosting, promotion, and even sometimes funding. It still gives me a certain smug satisfaction every time one of our student groups gets a grant from a union which objects to their very existence. Pro-life students are also instrumental in the wider pro-life movement. Last year, the Maris Bill, which aimed to legalise assisted suicide, was brought before Parliament, but thankfully was defeated. A number of young people who protested Parliament, lobbied their MPs, and helped in anti-euthanasia groups were brought into the pro-life movement through the student pro-life movement. Fortunately, it is likely that many pro-life bills will be brought before Parliament, such as Lord Shinkin's bill this Friday on the equality of disabled people in the womb. But unfortunately, it is likely that there will be more anti-life bills brought before Parliament also. But pro-life students look forward to defeating those anti-life bills and supporting the pro-life ones. Pro-life students that will have been trained and supported by the Alliance of Pro-Life Students. In recent years, there have been a number of pro-choice motions brought before student unions. Student unions are the organizations which organize activities and allegedly represent students to the university. But pro-choice motions, often varying in aim, but set out to declare a student union pro-choice, give funding to an abortion rights group, or in some cases, even ban pro-life groups from existing on campus. This has happened in the past, and when it did, it fell to a small cohort of students at the relevant university to come up with a plan of action and attempt to defeat. This was difficult, and these students often felt isolated. I remember the first time we faced a pro-choice motion at Edinburgh. I was involved in the Life Society at the time, and it required the rallying of other societies to the cause, which resulted in the biggest turnout of a student council ever. The Student Council at Edinburgh is a committee which decides the stances and policies of the student union. Every student who turns up can vote, but as you can imagine, many don't most of the time. The motion was comfortably defeated, but it was tabled again a fortnight later. You have to love democracy. At that time, we no longer had the element of surprise. It was defeated again, but unfortunately passed when retabled a fortnight later. So after that, we took a different tactic and proved it unconstitutional, and the union was forced to abandon the mandate. It was a scary time, but we were in touch with students at Bristol that had faced similar not long before us. So we had their lessons, and we learned our own. And suddenly, a body of knowledge was beginning to be formed. And since then, that is what the Alliance of Pro-Life Students does best. Banking these learnings and taking the best actions of the current student leaders so future leaders can hit the ground running when faced with such obstacles. Unfortunately, facing a pro-choice motion is still unpleasant, but no doubt we are a lot more prepared and skilled now, because with the help of Neil Addison and others at the Thomas More Legal Centre, we have created a pro-choice motion resource which instructs pro-life groups on how to defeat such a motion. It's full of wording templates and also has advice on the best tactics to take and arguments in order to defeat a pro-choice motion. As I've mentioned, regarding the Maris Bill, the Alliance of Pro-Life Students has been delivering results, not just in the student pro-life movement, but in the wider pro-life movement. In the past 4 years, pro-life organizations have seen an increase in the number of people, especially young people, applying for their positions. Now, many roles in Great Britain's pro-life organizations are held by Alliance of Pro-Life Students alumni and former members of student groups. Feeding young, skilled, and experienced people to pro-life organizations makes those organizations more effective and generates even more young people with an interest in being involved in the pro-life movement. When those young people come to university, the Alliance of Pro-Life Students is there, ready to train and develop them for a future in the pro-life movement. Leading a pro-life group gives a person an opportunity to practice managing people, organizing events, and raising money. These pro-life leaders then have the opportunity to get involved in the Alliance of Pro-Life Students and support other students to do the same or fundraise on a bigger scale. We give people exposure and experience they wouldn't have gotten until their 30s, but they now have it when they're in their 20s. These people are then a ready-made resource that can instantly start making a difference to the next pro-life organization they contribute to. All of the impact these individuals go on to make will be as a result of the existence of the student pro-life movement and the Alliance of Pro-Life Students. We've seen our members also take motions to organizations such as the British Medical Association, and there's even been a pro-life wedding or two along the way. My own wife, Ruth, often says how my role in welcoming guests to our Edinburgh launch, surrounded by shouting pro-choicers on either side, was crucial in her deciding to actually give me a chance or a date. So what new challenges and opportunities have presented themselves other than a marriage or two? Pro-life students still face many challenges on campus. We have seen lately an increase in the number of motions and activities with the aim of limiting free speech on campus. All too often, anti-free speech motions are simply being used by pro-choice individuals in order to close down pro-life activity on campus. Needless to say, the proponents of anti-free speech motions find the pro-life message one which is particularly objectionable. In the past fortnight alone, a petition and motion was launched with the aim of having Cardiff Students for Life banned from campus. And also, Strathclyde Life Society had their application to register as a society rejected for no clear reason. In light of this, we've given support over the phone and helped a counter-statement at Cardiff, and we're supporting the leadership at Strathclyde prepare their appeal against this decision. We will ensure that these societies continue to operate unimpeded by these actions. The Alliance of Pro-Life Students is here to stand up against these motions with the pro-life groups and ensure that these groups have the right to continue to operate on campus unimpeded by such moves. The increased pro-life activity on campus has not gone unnoticed by the proponents of abortion and other anti-life organizations. Covert and secret events with the aim of training students on how to submit anti-free speech motions and pro-choice motions have been organized. We've seen some of their promotional literature, and it's given us some of the greatest indication of our success so far. Lines such as, "We are organizing this conference in response to the increased anti-choice activity on campus." Statements such as this give us the confidence that we are moving in the right direction by making the pro-abortion lobby nervous. But we need to grow further and make sure that pro-life activity on campus continues to grow. The threat to free speech on campus is so real and growing, it's an issue even the Prime Minister has been called out to speak against. It is vital that we continue not only to start new pro-life groups, but also ensure that the ones that exist can continue to do so. So, up until now, there hasn't been a recipe for success for aspiring pro-life leaders on campus. But the Alliance of Pro-Life Students has now addressed this absence. Many of you may have seen our big announcement during the networking before the speeches. We are now launching our handbook. This handbook is a guide to pro-life leaders and committees on how to run a successful pro-life society. It's been made up from contributions from previous pro-life society leaders and the people who set up the Alliance of Pro-Life Students. Think of it as the advice and experience of 40 pro-life leaders in one book, and we decided it wouldn't have a headphone jack long before Apple did. So the handbook isn't just beautiful, which it clearly is. It's packed full of great information to make leading a pro-life society all the easier. It gets right down to the nitty-gritty of things like how best to find a common time to have a meeting. But it also gives great examples of events that pro-life students can go and make their own. It's got lots of advice on how best to run a pro-life society. It shows people how to attract new members to their leadership. It's even got some great photos of the team. Student support is at the core of what the Alliance of Pro-Life Students does. And supporting pro-life students is done by the provision of the Student Support Officer. The current Student Support Officer, Madeline Page, who many of you will know better as this evening's MC. Madeline is the only paid employee at the Alliance of Pro-Life Students because student support is the most important thing we do, and it's at the core of our mission. Over the past number of years, Madeline and her predecessors have generated numerous resources, spoken to countless pro-life students, supported the creation of new groups, and helped existing groups face challenges such as pro-choice motions, but achieve success such as some great events. Currently, the Student Support Officer role is a paid position for only 2 days a week. Needless to say, this limits what the Student Support Officer can achieve, and therefore limits what the Alliance of Pro-Life Students can achieve. It has always been the intention of the Alliance of Pro-Life Students to have a full-time employee supporting students. And this is vital because, as I said, supporting students is at the core of what we do. The Student Support Officer is our product. Having a Student Support Officer full-time not only means that there's more resource available to pro-life students, but also that it's someone's core focus. The Alliance has already achieved much, even with limited resources. I've mentioned it's time for the Alliance of Pro-Life Students to start growing even faster, and it's time for us to take things to the next level. That's why, after tonight's fundraiser, we're planning to expand the role of Student Support Officer further. This is so we can do more of what's at the center of the Alliance of Pro-Life Students. That is, supporting students. I've already shown you and spoken about our handbook. This is a fantastic resource for students. And in order to complement this, we need to make sure that they have someone there to support them and make the most out of this great new resource. Along with celebrating the success of the Alliance of Pro-Life Students, tonight is also about increasing our recurring donations to cover the expansion of the Student Support Officer. Later tonight, you will have 2 opportunities to give and invest in the future of pro-life students. One-off donations are a great injection of funds, but recurring donations will allow us to accomplish our mission into the future. If we double our monthly recurring donations, we will be in a position to greatly expand the Student Support Officer offering. Like I said, our first priority is expanding the Student Support Officer role. We are capable of producing some great content, and we regularly do, but we can do more. We've invested in our blog and other content, but more Student Support Officer time will enable us to better utilize this content, whether it be through video or other media. Producing more and better content gets students more engaged, more involved, and educates them in the motions, the arguments, and the issues that they need to know about in order to lead a pro-life society. We want to put on more events. Even a small event, as many of you will know, takes a large amount of time and effort. But bringing people together is the most effective way to create connections, and realizing that they are not alone is the most sure way that people will begin to champion the pro-life message. We already provide financial support to student groups, especially when they're getting started. But it's something that student groups need more of, to allow them to dream big, to plan ambitious events without having financial worries. I could go on, but I'm sure you get the idea. To expand the Student Support Officer role is to expand the student pro-life movement. So now you know why the Alliance of Pro-Life Students came into existence, and you know about the great work that we've done over the past 4 years. Hopefully, you've understood just how important the student pro-life movement is to the wider pro-life movement and ensuring that it continues to grow and flourish. We need to continue to grow in order to fuel this flourishing. And the Student Support Officer is the way that we can do it. But we cannot do it without your investment and your support. So I'm going to hand you back over to our Student Support Officer, Madeline. But I'll be back shortly, and you'll have 2 opportunities to invest in the future of the Alliance of Pro-Life Students and help to make our vision and mission a reality.